Hello, everyone. Look at that guy popping up. Good morning, good afternoon, good night. Happy Friday. Good, Kirsten. See, that's something I didn't know. I didn't know it was Friday. Welcome, everyone. Ciao, buongiorno, benvenuti a tutti all'Olimpiade delle Vendite a Freddo. I'm back. We're going to be jumping into it's good to be here this day. It is good to be here this day, Robert. It's Friday. It's good to be alive this day. It's Friday, not Friday the 13th, which is great. Did anything creepy happen to anyone on Friday the 13th? I forgot to ask. Anyone anything creepy or did anyone plant any like fake bats or fake spiders in your closet on Friday the 13th? Look at that little kid. Man, we are zooming through here. We are, let's see, we have one Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 3 more days of the Olympics left. I can't believe that we're coming here to a close. So I'm still going back and forth on whether I should go to bobsled and whether I should go to closing ceremony. So y'all are going to have to help me out and let me know if I should go to, I've been talking to Min about it. I'm like, do I have the strength to drive out to Cortina again? So there's only bobsled, 4-man bobsled on one day. And that is coming up on Friday, coming up on Sunday. It's the same day as closing ceremonies. And it's happening earlier in the day from 10 a.m. until 1:10 p.m. And then later that day at 8 p.m. is closing ceremonies over in Verona, which Verona is probably about an hour and a half, 2 hours from Milan. And then bobsled is about 4 hours and 4 minutes from Milan. So y'all have to let me know if people are interested in that, if you like bobsled, if you want me to go and take a video bobsled. Honestly, when I was growing up, I don't know if you can jump in the chat, seen the movie Cool Runnings. When I asked Min about it, Min had not, which made me feel so old, But if anyone has seen Cool Runnings, the story behind it actually is real. It happened in 1988, I believe. Where Jamaica had the first bobsled team. So I want to see if everyone's seen Cool Runnings. Such an epic film. Anyhow, okay, so why don't we go ahead and jump into the topic for today. So our topic for today is going to be how to coach, train, and build a lethal SDR team. So this is going to be focused on, yesterday we were more focused on how do you coach and train AEs? What do you look for in discovery? What do you look for to get them progressing in terms of their discovery skills? Full disclosure, someone asked a question in the chat or on one of my posts yesterday. They're like, what if your prospect's getting off track? And I answered it for 5 comments long. 5 comments long. So if you want to know more about asking discovery questions, go to my most recent post where I buried someone in a comment. I'm quite old enough to know about that movie. See, Kirsten, you're my people. Such a good movie. That and what's the one? Mrs. Doubtfire came out around the same time, and so I remember watching those whenever I was little. So today is more so on the SDR front. What are the pitfalls? What are the 3 things that damage SDRs, meaning from a short and long term? So it's much less about just specifically the topic of coaching, but how do I really build an entire team and how do I manage the team? I haven't seen that movie, but I lived through the stories in the paper at the time. Robert, you're the real gold medal. You're the real gold medal. So here's the thing, Robert, I don't want to, Min makes me feel old constantly just by existing. So I'm going to make you feel a little old. Well, maybe I will. I was 2 at the time. So I was 2 in 1988 when it happened. So I was just starting to, starting to crawl or walk at that time. But when the movie came out, I was certainly like front and center. I remember watching it like 100 times. So anywho, okay, let's jump into the first topic today. So I wanted to first start off with the biggest pitfalls to watch out for when it comes to SDRs. So this is managing as a team and as you're building a team of what are some of the things that the SDRs are going to run into, what are some of the biggest things that they're going to do, and some of the biggest things that they're going to say that might draw away from the overall success of themselves and of the team around them. So the biggest pitfalls for SDR, number one is Well, we're going to get into list building, but some of these are fair and some of these are not fair, meaning some of these, they have credence for what they're saying, and some of them are kind of more self-induced. So the first one that's fair is list building. So list building is one of the hardest exercises for SDRs. It's one of the most time-consuming exercises for SDRs. And what I mean by that is just finding the right person, the right time, the right organization, making sure they're still at the company, making sure they're within territory, making sure that they have the right email address, and that they have the right direct dial number. If you're going to, if they have a number that it's a direct dial number, that is a really difficult exercise. It sucks up anywhere from on the minimum end of 25% upwards of, I've seen as high as 55 and 60% of just list cleaning. So this can come down to a lot of things, of list cleaning from list building and list cleaning from the CRM, meaning they're just assigned some accounts and they have to go through that. I also can mean list cleaning in terms of when they're choosing accounts. So I kind of had a system in the past where I assigned to reps 50 accounts, but if they wanted to own other accounts, they could switch other accounts out of their name and switch new accounts in their name if they weren't owned by somebody else. So just finding the right accounts, and right accounts meaning they're a good fit, they understand, they're a good fit from a problem perspective, from what you can tell from the exterior, is going to be a huge problem, especially when the lists are coming from marketing. So marketing a lot of times will send over, they'll dictate that content downloads, for instance, is an MQL. So they'll send over all the lists of people who downloaded content, as MQLs. And and the SDR, they have to either go through it for the entire group as just one individual, or they have to go through their own specific list, but they have to clean out, deduplicate. They have to deduplicate, meaning sometimes there's two people that are mentioned in there that are the exact same person. A lot of time they're not at the right company. A lot of the time they're not at the right role. A lot of times they used to be at the right company, but now they're not at the right company because they've already done some executive churn. So that can be a huge area of time waste, number one, but number two, a huge area where you can come in as a leader and you can help them out. So if someone has to clean a list, not only is it going to slow them down and waste the time, quote unquote, and that's going to hit them in terms of quota, it's going to disable them from essentially calling on the leads that they need within real time. So a lot of these leads are time sensitive, meaning people who downloaded content or took some type of trigger event. So in this case scenario, it's going to prevent them from reaching out to them in a timely manner, and certainly in terms of how quickly they need to reach out to get the optimal response to the prospect. So that's the first one. The second one that I would group that's a time suck or a pitfall for SDRs is prospecting is a grind. And so they look to other avenues to say that they're working or say that they're actually doing it without actually doing it. So an example would be they like to onboard new reps, or they like to build out the sales enablement program, or they like to build out things with you, as a leader, or like help assign territories or train new people that are coming on, which is all fine and good. And a lot of leaders lean in there because they want for the rep to feel, accomplished, like they're part of something, like they're building towards something, like they're learning a new skill and they're becoming a leader. But it can not only be a time suck from the actual timing perspective, but the other piece that it introduces is sometimes if reps are helping with those kinds of activities, meaning they're helping you build out territories, or they're helping you train some new oncoming SDRs, at the end of the quarter, whenever they're not hitting their quota, they'll point to that. So they'll say, well, I couldn't hit my quota here this month because, I was too busy helping with the onboarding program. And to some degree, they're right. But really, it's the excuse, in my opinion, it's the excuse that they want. Sorry, SDRs. They're looking to do the easy, fun stuff that can help give them a reason of why they're not hitting quota without actually having to take the brunt of the responsibility for not hitting quota. So I try to save my SDRs from anything from a time perspective, so that it not only doesn't take away their time and their attention, but also because it doesn't leave them with almost a reason of why they couldn't do it and why they couldn't execute on their numbers. So that's going to be the biggest second pitfall or thing that SDRs are going to run into. The third thing that SDRs are going to run into that's a big pitfall of their time is, y'all are going to laugh at this. You're probably going to laugh at this. I think y'all know what this is. Actually, the third biggest pitfall, and these are not ranked in order, by the way. Maybe this is number one, is for SDRs is social media. Faux show. Social media. It's an awkward place to be saying that, even though it's on social media. Sorry, my lips are chapped because apparently winter weather is not a fan of that. So point being, social media is one of the biggest time sucks, I would argue, for anyone, including, SDRs, account executive, everyone alike, because it makes you feel like you're a part of a conversation or like you're working when often you're not. So in general, I have seen, and I'm just going to put this out there because, because of VPNs, I'm suppressed anyway. I'm shadow banned anyway on LinkedIn. I've seen a decrease in the quality of content in terms of how work focused the content is on LinkedIn and how day in the lifey the content is focused on LinkedIn. And I don't often see too many really deep, meaty topics that are about the role or about the persona versus are about, I just made this new hire, or I just made this new jump, or here's a day in my life. And that's all fine and good. I don't mind Instagram. I don't mind Facebook and all of that. And I don't mind that every once in a while on LinkedIn. But I have seen a very aggressive turn away from actual work topics into more social topics. Social media, even if it's LinkedIn, can be an exorbitant waste of time for SDRs because it's easy and it makes them feel like they're working whenever they're not actually working. So none of my top performers have ever had a personal brand, and none of the people that I know that have a personal brand have ever been top performers, meaning they were outrun by someone at their organization. Now there's a couple of older ones that have said, well, Beck, I was a top performer. I'm like, yeah, but you worked at like Xerox like 20 years ago. And that's a different day in the age than it is today. So when people are posting, it's a lot of work. When people are making cold calls, it's a lot of work. And so it can make people feel like because they did work, that it was work when it's not. So generally speaking, even if they bring in meetings from personal branding, people bring in meetings from personal branding, their meetings are outside of ICP, they don't hit the company, or they're not assigned to the person. But they get a lot of validation from it. They get a lot of likes, they get a lot of clicks, they get a lot of, webinar offers and, hey, will you come and talk to my, SDR team or yada, 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 which is all fine and good. But it takes a huge toll on the SDR. And it also, it pigeonholes their career into sales tech in specific. And then it also takes heat off of the one thing that's going to help them actually hit quota, which is focusing on that, making the cold calls, sending the actual emails, and focusing their efforts on developing their craft. And people have said before, well, Beck, don't you have a personal brand? I'm like, well, I don't, because a personal brand is you're focusing on it, which I'm never doing, truly statistically never doing. With my day, I spend 0% of my time thinking about that, the brand image. But the second thing is, I developed I got kicked in the teeth for year after year after year after year after year as a rep to develop some level of, know-how in terms of the phone. I would hope in terms of cold call, in terms of discovery call, that I then used and leveraged to build out more training material for others, just so they could have it for free, regardless of whether they worked with me or not. If I didn't have that intro period where I learned, I wouldn't have anything really to talk about. So it can be a really slippery slope, but I'd say the third biggest bucket or pitfall for SDRs is believing the complete lie that personal branding is an effective idea and will get you to the next stage in your career, that you're just one click away, that you just have to focus on it and it'll make you great at your wildest dreams, instead of focusing on the craft and getting better at cold email. Gold medal, Beck. Friday, she comes in with the gold. I hit that timing medal. So anything that makes you kind of feel like you're work adjacent topics, you can be at the office and Googling Olympics, for instance. it doesn't mean anything that you're in the actual office, and you can be during work hours and talking about, work topics and not be actually working. To me, and this is the last thing I'm going to say on it, we don't really know where this influencer thing is going to turn out, how it's going to turn out. Meaning, it's working now. Some people have, influencer brands and which is, ain't no shame or blame in it. My fear for those people is if all of this goes away, hypothetically, let's say that LinkedIn were deleted tomorrow, and social media and Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff. What are you left with from the core skill perspective? That's what I would be worried about. Do I actually know how to cold call? Do I actually know how to cold email? Do I actually know how to sell? Do I actually know how to market? Because if push comes to shove and things change and you are quote unquote reduced to that, I would be worried at that point that there is no core skill other than talking about personal brand and increasing those numbers. So it's a huge pitfall for SDRs, especially because it's so hard, especially because they see others of their peers doing it. And really, we haven't seen the whole thing play out. It's kind of like, everyone's taking Ozempic, nowadays. We don't know what the effects of that are on our body long term. We just don't yet. So until that kind of plays itself out, until people see the careers of the careers and career directions of the people that were doing it very heavily, you don't really know what the effects of it are going to be. So I would just be really nervous about that there's no core skill actually being developed. You aren't actually becoming better at cold calling. You aren't actually becoming better at cold email by logging on social media. So I'd just be thinking about that. Daniel Priestley has some very interesting takes on personal brand. One thing about his focus on person of influence, that the person or person's brand needs to be more recognizable than the brand itself. Maybe, yeah. So here's the thing. I don't have many thoughts on personal brand other than I think it's a complete waste of time. Companies, if they subsume the great upside of your personal brand, like companies a lot of times like it. It's specifically tech companies, specifically sales tech companies, because you are a free advertising agent that it's great to work there for them. Right? But that in the long term doesn't do you any good. And it kind of teases you into this game of like, oh, well, we can do a paid post, and then people get addicted to that side money. I almost view it as like the bartending of the sale or the business world of like, I was a bartender back in the day and you make some good cash. Like, Friday, Saturday night, I've made upwards of, I would ring in $600 in tips some nights, right? In my very, very early 20s, this was right when long story, but point being, you can make some good money. However, you're like $600 in a night, that's a lot of money. But then as you age to your late 20s and your early 30s and your late 30s and your early 40s, there's a lot of nights that aren't $600, number one, that aren't consistent. And number two, it's all on weekends and it's really hard on your body. And when you figure all that out is when you're like 40 or 45. And then it's kind of too late, meaning you'd have to go all the way back to school at that point. It's not cool at that point. You're going to have to be hanging out with a bunch of 25-year-olds, who are getting their degrees. And so it can be a really slippery slope, personal brand. And people, I feel like, don't see the effects of it until too late. So it's just something to mention. Okay, let's go into lap 2. Now that we're past pitfalls, by the way, I'm going to short track tonight. By far the most exciting Olympics event. I would for sure for the Winter Olympics, but I might say with all Olympic events, short track, people are screaming for the person they're rooting for. So I would definitely turn in. It is I thought skeleton was going to be my favorite, but for sure short track is my favorite. Okay, so the second lap is the 3 most damaging things for SDRs. So those 3 that I put up there are deliverability, data, and then data, the quality of your data, and then decay. So we talked about this a little bit, but deliverability is going to be, let's start there. So deliverability, we've talked about ad nauseum, so I'll be relatively short there. It's essentially the emails of the team are not lining up in the primary inbox of the alleged recipient. of the person that they're sending it to. So 59% on average wind up in the primary inbox for the recipient. Things that you can do from a leadership perspective that I would definitely suggest doing is setting up DKIM, setting up DMARC, setting up SPF, and setting up a custom tracking link. So what is a custom tracking link? Essentially what is happening within sales engagement is if you're using a sales engagement provider, that's Tina from Cortina, by the way. People are obsessed with her, really obsessed with her. So point being, when you sign on with a sales engagement provider, a lot of time what they do is they link you together and lump you in with other customers from a common sending domain. And how you are measured as far as deliverability in part is about your traits. So I kind of think of it like whenever everyone in the office was trying to lose weight as a team. So they had to get on the scale, and sometimes their weight would go up, even though Kelly lost 10 pounds and was like starving herself, because like Kevin, for instance, gained 3 pounds or gained 5 pounds. So not only are you measured as a team, that's already hard enough, but you're measured, if you don't have a custom tracking link, you're measured on the behaviors of the other customers that you're lumped in with, unfortunately. So a custom tracking link is a way to basically decipher out that your sending habits are only attributed to you. You are measured on your sending habits alone. So that's something that I would look into. DMARC, SPF, and DKIM are essentially, think of them like badges that are promises or good signs to inbox service providers that you have the credentials and you know what's wrong and what's not wrong, essentially from like the knowledge perspective. So these are essentially marking to inbox service providers that you are doing what you need to be doing to essentially stay within the realm of healthy email sending practices. So that's the first thing that I would think about. If you don't have a custom tracking link, it's kind of like if you haven't seen it, then you probably don't have it. Probably, if you don't know about it, you haven't heard about it, that's very common. You probably don't have it. So I would look into that as the first thing. The second thing is data. So I've seen, meaning the quality of data. So data, in my opinion, has a spicy monopoly kind of on the industry. So what I mean by data is people's email addresses and people's phone numbers. So it depends on the industry, it depends on the buyer, but mostly I've seen around 75% of people don't have a direct dial in there, meaning it's going to be some type of phone tree, it's going to be or maybe it's a non-listed number. But essentially 25% of people actually have their number listed within the data provider. And there's not a lot you can do from the data perspective other than, buy the best provider. And I would multi-thread my purchases, meaning I'm not going to advocate for anyone here on this in this episode. Number one, because I don't feel convicted about it, but excuse me. Number two, for me to recommend someone, it means that it actually has to work. Outreach is the best sales engagement provider in the market. They just are. Like, they have been for a very long time. That's why I partner with them, right? So when it comes to data, it really can go back and forth on who's better. That is just the honest to God truth, dependent upon the channel and dependent upon, who you're calling into and what is the ICP, who's better. I would suggest looking at multiple options and introducing the idea of using multiple providers instead of just one when it comes to data. But there is no silver bullet in terms of data provider. There just isn't. I've looked into all of them. I've looked into the stats, and there's not one that's just exorbitantly better than the other. The third one that I think about is data decay. So data quality is when you upload it, what is the amount of email addresses that are correct, and what are the amount of phone numbers that are correct, and what are the average number of phone numbers that are actually direct dials versus phone trees, meaning they're going to a broadcasted line, or almost think of it like an office phone, and then how many people at the organization are actually truly at that organization, so on and so forth. Data decay is over time, after that initial input of data, how many people, how much of it decays in a degree or in a way, and like over time, how much data was valid but becomes invalid based on a change. So data decay by definition will happen. It's kind of like saying you put fruit out on the counter, it's going to decay over time, just period. Just the effects of, people changing organizations or people changing email domains, it's going to decay. It's just, do I combat that amount of decay so that I can have the most up-to-date data as possible? So a couple things that you can do is, when you have people that are, even if they have a pre-existing email that's registered with you, if when they try to download content, etc., if you would have them re-update their email, that can really help with data decay. 3.6% on average is the amount that it's going to decay per month. So, and a vast majority of their time, 42% of their time, of reps' time, can be spent on just bad data alone. So it's something that I would think about in terms of a strategy. Do you have your emails enriched? Do you have an enrichment service backfilling their email addresses and their phone numbers and updating people? There are several different executive churn companies that can help whenever a person changes organization. So a great example of that is User Gems. User Gems basically tracks when people go from organization to organization. Let's say that you worked with a company that you worked with Outreach, for instance, and then someone at Outreach went to another company that you were interested in selling into. So what User Gems essentially does is it tracks that, it swaps in their accurate email, and then it puts them in a sequence if you have one, an outreach sequence if you have one predetermined. You would say, well, hypothetically, can I do that myself? Well, hypothetically, you could, but hypothetically, you're not a robot, meaning there's thousands of people who go through that change. And people are going to make the decision, usually their tech decision, within the first 90 days. So it's all about time. And, how quickly do I get to the person? How quickly do I reach out to the person? Because the problem that they have is very, very time-based. So User Gems is a way essentially to not only get people into sequences whenever they job change, but also data hygiene is a huge value prop for them. Is how clean is the data that I have within my CRM? So I would definitely, within 2026, if you don't have a data case strategy, if you don't have a deliverability strategy, I would definitely look into one of what are the prongs and how many things can I do to basically fight this, because it's happening whether I like it or not. Okay, so I'm done with the lab. Look at that. Look at how speedy I am. So this is not, full disclosure, I'm not lying about bobsled. This is one-man bobsled. Monobob is what they call it. Yeah. So this is one-man bobsled. So, but the four-man bobsled is going to be coming up on Sunday. So they do monobob today, and then they do dual bob tomorrow, and then they have the four-man bob on Sunday. But that is that's the same basically stadium in Cortina that they had skeleton at. Okay, so let's go into the third lap for today. So the third lap if I wanted to go into is how to diagnose where your SDRs are struggling. Meaning, as your team is struggling, how to diagnose what's happening. So the first thing that I look into is obviously deliverability. Meaning how many emails are being delivered. So that's going to be on a group level. You can't really do that from an individual level unless you look at their open rate, their individual open rate. So that's the first thing I would look at. The second thing that I would look at, this is actually probably going to be a shorter lap. The second thing I would actually look at is how much activity are they doing? And the reason that second is that's usually one of the primary problem. I don't see a lot of SDRs struggle to deploy training. I don't see a lot of SDRs necessarily struggle to write quality emails. They do, but before that, preceding that, what I do see SDRs doing is not sending out that much activity. I have seen organizations where it's SDRs will, it's all over the map, but sometimes SDRs are only sending out 5 emails, 10 emails, making a couple calls a day. And then the poor leader is wondering, why aren't they being successful? So that is definitely the second thing that I would look at. It's hard to keep it in front of you. A platform like Outreach can really help. I would build really razor sharp reporting in terms of that I want put in front of me, and I would make it a daily habit of checking how many emails are they making or sending, and how many calls are they making. Now they're going to come back with the excuse of, well, I wanted to spend my time. I want to be really thoughtful about the outreach, which is fine. But even if they're personalizing the entire email, you should be able to get out more, no less than 35 if they're personalizing it from front to end. So that's the next place that I would look at is how much activity are they sending? And usually it's going to autocorrect from there. The funny thing is, I make the joke, but it's not really a joke. Half the time, I think that my job is just essentially finding data and presenting it to the leaders, because then they autocorrect themselves. So I've seen, 250 person organization say we're struggling with adopting training. And I'm like, what do you mean by that? And they're like, well, they're not adopting the cold call track. And I'm like, well, just give me the login. I'll kind of figure out what's happening. So I do a login. I log in. I came back in front of, I'll never forget this, in front of an entire room of leadership. I'm like, well, I have good news and I have bad news. The good news is, which one do you want first? And they're like, the good news. I'm like, the good news is I found the problem. The bad news is what the problem is. The problem is not that they have an adoption issue, or that they're struggling to adopt. The problem is that your dialer isn't hooked up, and hasn't been hooked up for the last 3 years. So unless your reps are making dials from their manual phone, the problem isn't the cold call training, or your pre-existing cold call training. As much as I love to take credit of it, or you to hire me to, it's not that. It's that the dialer isn't hooked up. And just watch everyone's jaw drop as 250 person team. They realize that they've never made a dial. So I would look into the activity, and I would look into the third piece is when. When are they making those dials? When are they sending those calls, et cetera, so you can get a good marker on that. So they should be sending calls, sending emails and making calls Wednesday, Thursday, Friday afternoon, 2 p.m. to 6 p.m., 5 minutes before the hour and after the hour is going to be the best hit times in terms of activity. So I would focus there and see how often are they making the dials and sending the emails early in the day and then early in the week, because it's going to do them the least amount of favors in terms of actually producing the results that they want. So that's the third thing that I'd look at. Once you get past that, the fourth thing I would look at is subject lines. So it's a great place to catch whether they're personalized or not. So I would tease out from the subject line perspective. Mine take manual actual inputs of put your personalization premise here. So it's a good way to check/catch people from not using an actual personalized subject line. So that's the first thing that I would do in terms of, and you can see the open rate there, but the quality of the subject line, did they personalize? And also how many emails were they sending with the exact same subject line? So that's a way to diagnose of okay, is number one, is it causing deliverability problems? But what is the quality of what they're sending? What are my prospects seeing from an open rate, from an open perspective, so I can see if that's really the problem. Then the next thing I would look at is basically the actual email. Is it too long? Meaning, are they putting two sentences into one paragraph? Are there any long blocks of text? Are they using acronyms? Are they using punctuation, which is a good thing? How many links are in the email? So a good place to trim out some headache is that there's a lot of links within the document. If they included their, your website and their phone number and their LinkedIn page and some piece of content. So I try and trim out the most links possible. And how many pattern words are they using? We work with people who struggle with X, Y, and Z. We're the number one blank who helps blank do blank, quick chat, SEO. I'd love to, just circling back, just bubbling to the top of the inbox. So then I look at the quality of the email. How often are they saying pattern words that are triggering to the person that is a sales email? And then also on the cold call, what's the quality of questions that they're asking? Are they actually getting to the point in the cold call where they are asking questions? And if they're asking questions, are they specific? Are they objective? Are they around their metrics? How many gimmicks are they using within the cold call? Normally when I hear cold calling training things go live, meaning I hear someone, blasting a success story, it's how they're defining success is they're getting someone to laugh at the beginning, which there's a lot after the call to that. So I would look at what kind of questions are they asking the person, but generally speaking, even with cold calls, it's the main problem is the amount of connects that they're having. So it comes down to what time of day are they calling, because it's less about the quality of the cold call. It's more about, are they making it the accurate time to be able to get enough connects. Look at this wipeout. Ready for it? I think it's about to happen, or maybe I messed that up. Anywho, on short track, there it goes. Oh, takes one, takes out the other. There goes Team Italy. That's why it's so exciting live. They're putting buckets of water in between races on the actual ice to make it more slippery. It's really, really wild. And they ran water over the track 3 times before they started. So very, very interesting. Anywho, so those are the places that I would look to diagnose. I'm actually done from a lap perspective. But I would look at, how many emails and calls are they making and sending? What time of day are they doing that? How's their email deliverability? How many subject lines are the same? How many subject lines are different? Are they using true personalization? And then I would look into the actual email and the actual text of the call to check, is it too long? Is 6 lines as opposed to, see, the skate's right near that guy's head. The skate's right near that guy's head. Min just came on air. Y'all, we just got a Min sighting. We got a Min sighting. So it's Friday, y'all. It's Friday. We're letting our hair down. So point being, is it too long? Are they using acronyms? Are there long blocks of text? Acronyms are a positive. Are they using punctuation that helps the person read it? What is the value prop? How specific is it? How according to their metrics is it? So on and so forth. Places that I look to catch any kind of errors in terms of diagnosis. The last one that I'll say is go styles. I would check into if they're hitting all of those metrics and it's not making sense, the math, it could be likely they're go styling. So I would run a report for all of the cold calls that they're making. How many were under? I'm going to be nice and say 8 seconds, but really it's 3, or the reverse. I'd be nice and say 3 seconds, but really it's 8. Of like, if it's less than 8 seconds, it's really a go style, meaning they're calling the person they're hanging up. Okay, let's go to the next lap. So the next lap is we're going to go into coaching, the top things to coach on, and the do's and don'ts of building a coaching practice. So this is going to be a combo lap around coaching and essentially the rubric. So the things that I'm coaching on with SDRs, number 1 is the buyer persona. How well do they know the buyer persona? Do they know the metrics? And this is something that I would definitely encourage over time with the SDRs, so they get to know the buyer. So how well do they know the buyer persona? Meaning, are they, and I would put it into practice that every week they have to essentially come to you and recite a couple of the metrics that the buyer's running, that the buyer's measured on. What are the industry averages of those, and at what point do they cause a problem? The second thing that I would think about coaching them on is, activity for sure. But then the aesthetic of an email, how long was it? How spread out was it? How many punctuation markers were in there? How much did they use personalization? Did that pattern interrupt? And the last one that I would think about coaching them on is psychology and getting them to know psychology. It is the least important in terms of like their overall career progression, but it's still very important. Is how much psychology are they learning about human beings in general, meaning 3 different ego states, the different ways that people respond, the different types of personality, the personality disorder, like even disorders is one that I look into of like, are people avoidance? Are people anxious attachment style? Are they anxious avoidant attachment style, or fearful disorganized attachment style? And it will just, the more that people learn about psychology, specifically ego states, will help the buyer, the SDR over time, just know what things to say and not say that will hit people in the wrong way. A lot of times I look at clips online, and this can be in regards to anything. And it's so interesting to me that it doesn't matter what the person's just done or accomplished. Excuse me, the way that they say something can ruin it or can make it. Words really matter. Psychology matters. It's something that I would look at after I look into learning the buyer persona, but it still can really affect how someone feels about you in the overall. Okay, so that is what I would look into. That's what I would coach reps on, plus the items within the last lap. In terms of the rubric and building a rubric for coaching SDRs, I would say number one, it needs to be a centralized rubric. It needs to be an established rubric. It needs to be in one place where essentially they know what you are after and what you're going to say and what you're going to measure on. That's really key, that is established and that you don't change that. So I'd say from a consistency perspective, one of the biggest mistakes is kind of one of the biggest mistakes that I see when it comes to AEs as well, coaching AEs as well, is it's this very loosey-goosey idea of I think this, I think that, I think et cetera, of like, it's almost like they invent the angle of where they would go on like live during the actual coaching session. There needs to be an actual established rubric with no subjective terms. So, or very, very few subjective terms if you're going to include any at all. I would suggest not doing it, of like saying, was this readable, for instance? Instead of asking that the rubric, I would ask questions like, was it 500 words or less? Or how many words was it? So it needs to be an objective line that you are after, to where every rep is measured on that, so they know the expectations, so they know how they should be getting, essentially when they've done something wrong, they need to know that they've done something wrong and why they've done something wrong. So in terms of the rubric, I would suggest that it's not a team format, that you do it one-on-one, and that it is established in a centralized location with all the criteria laid out. So as far as the actual session, it's kind of very similar to what I suggested with AEs. I would suggest that they bring you one call, but then you also make a habit of listening to their calls, specifically the intro portion, the personalization portion, and the questions that they're asking, that you make a habit of listening to those for 15 minutes a day of all of your teams, so you get to know your teams over time. A lot of the things that they do aren't that egregious, but they do them so regularly that that's really what's hurting them in the end. So that's it for those in terms of coaching. I am speeding through this. I'm making up time on the back end. People are probably actually thrilled with that idea. So the last thing I wanted to go into is how to build a stellar team over time that consistently outperforms their quota. I wanted to finish with one key item in terms of building a team. The thing that's the most important for SDR as a grind, it's hard to keep people motivated. The number one thing that's the most important, in my opinion, is that they are getting better. If they're getting better, they will consistently show up for you, in my experience. And what I mean by that is people have tried to motivate SDRs through a lot of things. I'm going to motivate them through spiffs. I'm going to motivate them through, role progressions. I'm going to motivate them through, a lot of different things, like they get money and they get, rewards, or they get awards, and all of that is good and fine. I'm not going to go into any of that. The thing that I will say that is not optimized for, that needs to be optimized for, that's probably the hardest to optimize for, but is the most necessary, is that you yourself learn as a leader what are the things that they need to say to actually move the ball forward, and that you're teaching them those things over time. If you have that and your reps are improving, they won't leave you and they won't lose motivation. So coaching is not about a one-time activity. It's about getting better over time. And so the key to this is, in my opinion, which is the hardest part, you learning as a leader. I am on a blistering pace. I've always been on a blistering pace of what I have to learn. What I have to learn. Because as time goes on, I have to learn because my buyer's learning. Right. So I not only have to be ahead of that, it's my responsibility to my prospects and potential buyers that I am learning something every single day, whether it's a psych theory or whether it's, email deliverability used to not be something that was in my knowledge base. But then as I learned about it, I'm like meaning that it existed. I'm like, oh, this is probably really important. So I found ways to just make it happen. A lot of being a good leader is about the same things of what it means to be a good rep. And what I mean by that is it comes down to, which is crazy to me that this isn't brought up, a little crazy to me, is it comes down to accountability. Are you accountable for your successes and are you accountable for your failures? I have been in the spot where I've done both, and I've seen, it is multiple people's responsibility other than myself. And then I've also seen it as my responsibility. And it comes down to how accountable you are. There are things that I did. Some people have asked me, like, okay, well, whenever you became an SDR, because I became an SDR at the age of 30. I was an AE, enterprise AE back in Texas for 7 years of my career. And then I moved out to the Bay Area to be with my grandparents. And so it's like at that point, I knew I was in tech and I didn't know anything about tech. So I took a step back to understand. I'm like, if number one, I need to figure out what tech is about. But number two, if I can get good at prospecting, that was my hardest part as an AE. So my thought was, if I can get good at the hardest thing, then everything else will be gravy. But I also had the realization that I'm like, I'm 30 and I'm an SDR in the most expensive city in the United States. So there are certain things that I did, and no one had to ask me to do them. Why? I was 30 in the most expensive city in the United States. I'm like, I have to make something happen fast and now. So I crashed into networking events that I had no right being in. I studied these people beforehand. I'm like, I need to say that one thing within 5 seconds to be brief, be brilliant, be gone. I remember at one point when I was thinking about publishing content, it was a Saturday night. My grandfather was sitting there on the couch. We were watching TV, and all I was doing was adding SDRs on LinkedIn. Add. He's like, your finger's going to break. Why? Accountability. So in terms of building a lethal SDR team, the thing that needs to happen, that has to happen, that they will not be lethal without, and they will not stay even if they are, is you have to learn more every single day so that they being around you is an increasingly better idea because of the amount that you know. So it's the hardest thing, but it's the most necessary thing in terms of they're only going to stay for... Take a word from the wise of people obviously didn't stay with me for good juju reasons. Meaning I struggled in terms of being like, how's your weekend? Blah, blah, blah. Excuse me. But, I really focused on learning things that I didn't know so I could help teach them things that they didn't know. So that's the most important piece, I think, to building a lethal team over time. People that own it when it's good or bad, Totally, Jay Frank, of like, it's not about being perfect. Nobody's perfect. If you think that you become successful at something by getting everything perfect in the practice rounds, it's like, look at this right now. Alyssa Liu, she won, she was in bronze place. She was in third place after the short program. And then she went into the free skate and she won the gold for both overall. So you could say that she came in and she made some mistakes in the short program, and that put her in third, but she didn't let that keep her in third. She went to gold medal. Why? Because she had the accountability to say, this is on me. This is on me whether I win, and this is on me whether I lose. One of the biggest mistakes I see from leaders and reps, honestly, is just lack of accountability. They're like, oh, well, my leader owes me, they don't coach me. I'm like, boo-hoo. I'm like, yes, of course, it's something that would be really helpful, but you cannot depend on everyone else around you. You can't depend on anyone. You have to be okay no matter what someone gives you or doesn't give you in terms of coaching. So it's kind of a bonus, not something that's mandatory. Here's another one. Ilya, he slipped and he came in 8th when he thought he was going to come in for the gold. And his first reaction was kind of boo-hoo me. Of like, why I wasn't ready for this and I wasn't ready for the pressure. And then he had a turnaround within his attitude. That turnaround is your choice, is my choice. It is my choice whether I learn something today or don't learn something today. So I would just think about that from the leadership perspective. If they don't see you learning, they're not going to develop the habit of learning. They mirror your behaviors. Right? A lot of times it's kind of like a real kid, like they mirror your behaviors. If you value metrics, they start to value metrics. If you value learning, they start to value learning. If you don't do any of that and you make up excuses, so will they. So you can't get mad at them about it. So that's it. Thank you so much today for coming. That is Friday. We have 2 days left. Can't believe we only have 2 days left. I'm starting to get sad. I'm tired, but I'm still starting to get sad. So tune in tomorrow where we are going to be going into, we're going to pivot back to account executive. And we're going to be going into a very spicy topic or a very necessary topic and not talked about often, the how-to of deal reviews, forecasting, deal stage criteria, how to prevent slippage, basically all of these CRM elements of account executive. And then we're going to close out on in the closing ceremonies, we're going to do a mixture of different topics, but how to make the jump from SDR to AE, how to go from SMB AE to enterprise or AE to leader, things that your manager never will never tell you that actually really matter. And then we're going to do a crash course in terms of all the topics that we have covered. We might have to delay that one till Monday if we do bobsled closing ceremony, but we'll keep. I know, Kirsten, I'm already getting sad. I'm really getting sad. Okay, y'all have a great rest of your day. Jay, Frank, Kirsten, everyone for showing up. I will see you tomorrow where we're going to go into AE deal reviews, deal slippage, forecasting, and that kind of criteria. And then we'll close out on Sunday or on Monday, but we'll let you know tomorrow either way. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Tune into Short Track tonight. It's crazy. It's like the gladiators. And I will see y'all all tomorrow. Arrivederci for now, and ciao.